It's amazing, isn't it, how some birds look completely different in different seasons, and yet others stay showy all year round, like these ones. These are goldfinches, and we've seen lots of them on our bird feeders here at Arn. In fact, when they turn up, they tend to take over. They're very showy birds, very noisy, beautiful with that red face and that little yellow flash, and there they're eating sunflower seeds. But in the wild, they prefer teasel seeds at this time of year. And just look at this, it's been sent in by Jack Richardson. There are the teasels, and as I say, that's what they really specialise on in the winter. But they change their diet in the seasons. They're partial migrants, so some will stay all year round. Others will migrate in the autumn to France and Spain to find better feeding sites. But they tend to be nomadic rather than site faithful. And evidence has shown that it's the females that are more likely to leave the UK in search of warmer climes. And maybe the teasel is a reason for that, eh, Chris?
Yeah, they like teasels very much. I like teasels very much. I'm not the only one. It's not just goldfinches. Take a look at this. This is teasel in the summertime. And at this time of year, those rings of florets, the flowers on the teasel, are a magnet for moths and butterflies that visit them for their nectar. So growing teasels in your garden is a great idea. It provides for butterflies in the summertime. But this is what they look like at this time of year. Here is a teasel. And I mean, they're pretty tough things. You know, this is almost like a cone. They're tough to the touch. They're very spiky. They're difficult to get into. Now, one thing that we know about the UK species of finch is that generally the size of the bill determines what seeds you feed on. So you might think that, you know, if we had a teasel like this and you were a greenfinch with a big, powerful bill, if I put this down here in front of the macro camera, you know, can you imagine, look, you'd think that, OK, maybe that might be able to power through, but no, in fact, it can't. No, this bill is simply too big to get in. What it needs is a much smaller, narrower, conical bill, and that's what we see on the goldfinch. In fact, it's only the goldfinch that can get into teasels. But even then, there's a difference, because the males have longer beaks than the females, generally about 12.4 millimetres, the females 11.3. Which means that the females have much smaller beaks. And in fact, I can show you here, if I go back to this camera here, now I've got a teasel that I've split in two. So you can see the seeds on the inside here, how deep within this teasel head. And what has to happen is that the male inserts its bill down into that and removes the seeds. And only the male has a beak long enough to reach down inside the teasel like this, to be able to grab hold of those seeds and remove them. It's more difficult than for the females. They can do it, but it takes them a lot more effort. So it's almost as if the male goldfinch has evolved to be able to exploit teasels. So maybe that's why the males stay in the UK, where there's lots of teasels growing, and the females have that tendency to migrate to the continent, where perhaps, I mean, this is just a theory off the top of my head, there are different types of seeds for them to eat in the winter.
It's just amazing how all these animals evolve in different ways, isn't it?